Okay, and we are officially live. I will do my usual and put a comment letting people know to say hi and wait for people to come in, give people a few moments.
Okay,
We are officially live.
Thank
I
you.
will do my usual and put a comment to say hi. Hi Will, hi Claire, brilliant to see you.
I am here. Sorry.
It's not just me telling Jay's story. No, it's all right.
Sorry about that.
Hi Claire, brilliant to see you.
Hey, Claire. Hey, William. Who else have we got?
Oh, we're getting a little bit of audio feedback there, Jay. I'm not sure.
Oh, how did I stop that? There we go. Is that it now?
Yeah, I think that's all right. Thanks. Oh, hi, David. Thanks for joining as well. Few people jumping on straight away. I think that's doing well. I see that our slow increase in viewers and live streams is starting to really show, Jay. I think we've made a big difference with all the ones we've already done.
You can never get used to doing this.
I know what you mean. Hi, Gillian.
But it's good that it's good that the page is starting to reach out to more folk and more folk are engaging. I actually noticed that on one of the pages a day. I think it was something thought the page that the engagement on it's just went up so much. And to see one of the problems we spoke about 4 years ago with another charity was people are afraid to like the page or engage with it in case family members or their friends think, why are you liking something like that to do with that? And so it was challenging trying to get people to engage. And now we're seeing a lot more people engaging, and it is refreshing. It's good to see.
Definitely, I think that links into a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, about some of that shame and fear, really. I think people are more willing to be open about what they're passionate about. Hi, Sheila. Thanks for joining.
Hello, Sheila. Gillian, Christine, David.
Lots of wonderful people coming on to support. Thanks, Angela. I think that's their ACE awareness.
That's Angela. I hope it's Angela, no Claire anyway, thinking I'm her husband.
I think, yeah, the next live stream actually will be looking at Angela's story as well. That's Jay's wife. So we'll be properly exploring kind of how relationships can be impacted by ACEs and trauma, but also intergenerational trauma a bit later on, with all of your family being very brave in speaking up and sharing their own stories. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Hi, Debbie. Getting some more people in.
Hiya, Debbie.
Wonderful. Well, I think we've got quite a few people watching, Jay, so we can probably kick off as people slowly join throughout, I'm sure. To everyone who doesn't know me, hi, I'm Isabel. I have been hosting the 7030 live streams for the past few months. I am a 7030 ambassador, but also Wave Trust's project manager for police and criminal justice. And I am joined today by my wonderful 7030 colleague, but also member of Hearts of Eight's peer support group, Jay Haston. Do you want to give us a brief introduction, Jay, before I let people know a little bit more about the trigger warnings there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Jay Haston. I consider myself a broken guy who's just trying to fix the world for his children, which is what we're going to speak about. I raise awareness on adverse childhood experiences, help the Wave Trust in their 7030 campaign. I truly wholeheartedly believe in it. I think you'll vouch for that, Isabel. I believe it is the way forward. Prevention is the way forward, and helping people, helping fellow survivors find their voice and empower themselves and take their lives back. So that's about what I can say about myself. I started this journey just doing a video after I'd been in a therapy session, and for there it's just went crazy. Like, I didn't know the impact of a man speaking out and what it would have done. I really didn't.
Absolutely. And I think that's really telling, really, that was the start of your story, because I think it's, well, not so much the start of your story, but the start of the impact that you've been able to have in other people's lives. And one of the reasons we're doing the live stream today is because of how you've seen sharing what you've been through can actually really help other people going through the same thing. And I know that you've talked to me about what you hope to get out of today is really that other people who've been through similar things feel the courage to start a healing journey of their own, really, in some way.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think before we get into the proper meat of the live stream today, I did want to say, obviously, we are going to be sharing details of someone who has been through extremely traumatic events. We'll obviously avoid going into too much detail wherever possible, especially in ways that we know would be triggering to people. But the topic is in and of itself triggering somewhat. So if for whatever reason you find yourself feeling discomfort, or even all the way up to having very, very strong reactions, know that it's not at all your fault. It doesn't usually happen, but there can be instances when it does, and it's a very natural reaction to something you've experienced previously. Often it's very much sufficient to really just ground yourself in the moment by taking really deep breaths in and deep breaths out. If that's not enough, you can try just taking yourself out of the situation for a moment. Go get yourself a drink of something, walk around a little bit, just get out of that headspace for a moment. If that isn't enough, please, please, please do put something in the comments, and we'll get in touch with you separately and follow up with you and make sure we're okay. We have people within the Wave team who are trained to deal with people who've experienced trauma and might be triggered. So please do not deal with it on your own if something does happen. I'll also similarly say, because Jay is sharing such a sensitive topic, please do be kind in the comments and aware of what you're asking or what you're sharing. I know that people often also want to share their own stories in the comments for obvious reasons. Whilst you're absolutely welcome to, please also be aware of what that might set off in others. And you can happily get in touch with us and discuss, easier or better ways to kind of get that story out there further down the line if that's something you do want to do. So, Jay, before I get into specific questions, do you want to kind of mention a little bit about your story for people who haven't heard anything about it before? Do you want to kind of explain a little bit about why you're here today?
Why I'm here today? I'm here today because I lost hope. I lost faith in the system. I lost faith in myself. I lost hope in myself. I didn't know who I was. There was a pivotal point in my life just after my stepfather passed. It was his anniversary yesterday, and I tried to take my own life. I didn't want to go into too much detail. We didn't want to trigger anybody, but I tried to do it in a horrific way. That I don't know how I'm still here, but I survived that, and I started questioning why I was acting the way I was acting. I was in the criminal world. I was heavily involved with crime. I was heavily involved with drugs and substances. I was using substances. Cocaine was my preferred choice because I'll get onto that. It let me stay awake, and I wanted to stay awake because I was afraid of these nightmares and flashbacks I kept getting, and the memories that I had that I didn't want to talk about, they all bottled up. And so, in the few years after, I held in a job, a courier job, and everything came to a point where Angela's story came out. And she said to me, Angela was the first person I'd told about my story. I met her 27 years ago. Well, we met her longer than that, but it was 27 years ago we got together. And she was with somebody who's now in jail for 6 years, thankfully. But I told her that it was wrong because I knew, because it had happened to me, and that, it shouldn't have happened. So we got to a point where we were trying to manage each other's mental health through 18 miscarriages, through substance abuse, through crime, and when it came to Angela stepping forward, she says to me, Jay, if I'm going to do this, then obviously it's obviously big impacts, then make a deal and you go and speak about it today. And I thought, being a man, no bother, if it's going to help you, I'll go to the doctors. And I went to the doctors and I told them that I filled in the gaps. What they knew that my dad had got murdered when I was 2.5 years old. That was the first trauma in my life. What I hadn't told them when they were diagnosing me with depression, anxiety, insomnia, was that my granddad got a hold of me and he was a paedophile. I didn't want to go into too much details, but the memories I've got are horrific, and no man should have to go through that. And if any men have went through that, then please reach out, because it's something that men don't speak about, and it happens more widely than you think. But anyway, so I'd opened Pandora's box without realising it. I'd opened Pandora's box, but at the same time, I'd realised I'd found a way how to try and live with this, what happened to me, the things that happened to me. So I ended up at psychology, and I'm sitting in a psychology room, and 4 weeks into it, I says to psychologist that was getting him off it. I was like, listen, I was like, I'm not daft, because he hadn't said nothing to me. I was just in this room once a week and I'm talking to this woman. And I says, look, I'm not daft. I says, we're sitting in the hospital. I says, you're asking me all these mad questions about childhood and asking me to shut my eyes and think about this and think about that and go over stuff that I've told you and that. I says, what is actually wrong with me? I was like, what is wrong with me? I says, because I know there's something wrong if I'm sitting in a hospital. And that's when she said that I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder caused by the child sexual abuse that happened to me and with the bereavements that happened to me in my younger life as well, which was a lot of bereavement around my cousins, drug overdoses, suicides, bullied at school. So that I mean, we're just scratching the surface of my story, Isabel. But that was what led me to opening up finally about it. And as regards to publicly talking about it, as I was seeing too many friends, I was seeing too many people I knew, many people I grew up with, family members who were turning to drugs, turning to crime, committing suicide. And the link was all there. It was like suicide, crime, childhood, broken childhood, and whatever way it was, you know. It didn't need to be child sexual abuse. A lot of violence, if you're growing up in violence and things like that, you know, when you put them together, I said to myself, I said, there's a link between suicide, substance abuse, and ACEs. And that was when I really bought into ACEs as well. So for there, I worked with my psychologist for a long time. I'm working with one now still. You know, that thing with trauma is I believe there's 3 types of survivors. I believe there's the survivors who were like me and were numbing the pain and struggling and burying it. And then for whatever reason, their lives will go into either self-destruct or change will be forced upon them. Then there's survivors who seem to get by because they've had an always available adult, or they've had resilience and people round about them, or they've managed to throw their coping mechanisms into a cause or work. And then there's this portion of survivors like me and Claire and Natalie, Angela, Debbie, who aren't quite fixed. We're broken, but we're prepared and we're okay with talking about that so that we can make life better for our children. And I believe that's the bracket of survivor that I fall into is that one.
I think that's a really interesting distinction, Jay. And I think, you know, resilience is such an interesting concept in the fact that it's not just something fixed and something individual. It can be something that you can build within a person, but also something that is strengthened by many things around them in their environment, by the relationships they have, by the community they have around them. And I think that there are certain people who experience terrible traumatic events, but always had that. Maybe they had a secure baseline to start with, and the trauma happened after, you know, a kind of secure pattern was hardwired. Maybe they had support throughout, etc. But we know that resilience can be created at any age. Obviously, there's critical windows of opportunity in which it's easier, but it can really be done at any age. And I think that you and many of the other brilliant ambassadors that we have who kind of speak of their own story are in that category of people who are building their resilience now, even though they didn't necessarily have it as a child or as, you know, terrible things were happening to them. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think your story is so hopeful in a sense, because it really shows that to anyone who has gotten this far in life without being able to build much resilience can start doing it right this second. And, you know, can actually be in a very different position in the future with the right support in place.
Absolutely. There was a point, like I said, where I felt totally hopeless that I felt I had to end in my life. And now I know that it might be a long journey, but there's hope there now, and there is resilience, and you do meet good people, and you meet people who understand you. That's the key concept there, is understanding people who have been through this. I feel that a lot of us are misunderstood, especially when you end up with a disorganized attachment like I did. I find it hard holding relationships together, keeping friends. I'm quite a complex character because it's and sometimes I can't help what I'm doing, but I know now that I'm on a journey where there's a purpose there and there's a goal there. And that goal for me is to make the world a better place for my children. And that drives me. That drives me.
And I think that wanting to break those intergenerational cycles is something that drives so many of the people we work with on a daily basis. And I think that's definitely one of the things that drives me as well. I wanted to pick up there on a couple of things you've brought up. and kind of tie them together into one question. So I know that you brought up at the very start how you were kind of able to seek help and how you were able to open up for the first time with Angela. But also you kind of mentioned disorganized attachment. And now we know that disorganized attachment usually forms when a child isn't able to find a coping strategy, let's say, to get consistent care or to get their needs met. And that obviously then has consequences on your later relationships, as you mentioned. So I wanted to ask, how has trauma impacted your relationships, do you think? Both, throughout your lifespan in different ways, as I'm sure there are many different types of examples.
I think honestly you would need a show with me and Angela to talk about. I've been in a 27-year relationship and 26 or 27-year relationship. 22 year married this year, I know that. And that's the only relationship that I've really held. I've got friends. I've no friends for when I was in Edinburgh, none at all. I've got friends from when I first moved through to West Lothian when I was 12-year-old still. But only a couple. You'd think I would have loads of friends. And if people think I'm their friend and I didn't, it's only because I didn't think people are my friends in that way. That's it. So it's subjective, and that's what I'm talking about. People didn't understand. So there might be many people out there who think I'm Jay's friend, and I'm sitting here saying I've no friends. It's no that. It's hard to explain. Like friends who'll be there for you when you need them. You pick up the phone. I've got a couple I can think of, but that's it. My relationship, though, it's I believe trauma's held my marriage together at points. I believe at points, and I'll be openly honest with you, and so will Angela when she speaks, there's times we probably should have finished, especially like when we cried out to get help. We probably should have finished and went our own journeys, but trauma held us together as well, but also made us stronger together. And I described myself to my therapist. She asked me to describe me and Angela's relationship, and I says we were damaged goods who held each other together. And that was how, and it is still sometimes how I view our relationship. I love Angela to bits, we're married, we've got 5 kids, and what a journey we've had. But I'll tell you what, anybody out there that thinks it's been easier, that, it's not, it has impacted heavily. I've got attachment issues, clearly. I've got abandonment issues. So at points through the 26 year, it's them that's kept me with Angela and vice versa. So that's the way trauma plays into it. My mum, she's like my hero. She's like what she's been through her life, and I look at her and I don't know how I didn't get the resilience for her. It's because she was working all the time, probably trying to feed. She was a single mum at 2 kids, because she was pregnant with my brother when my dad went, and so she was working all the time. And the only role models I had in my life were my mum and my nana and my Auntie Rita, 3 women. So it's always been women that were role models. So I seem to get on better with women, which has caused me problems in the relationship. And, it's this is me just being honest, it's caused me problems because emasculation, we'll go into that later on. And I can only thank Angela for, putting up with me half the time. And especially in the first half of the marriage where I was a loose cannon. I was headed for jail or for for dead. I was one way or the other. I was headed. I was on a one-way ticket, and I wasn't caring. It wasn't until I got to the point that I did start saying to myself, you know what, I didn't like who I am. So impact on relationship, huge, absolutely huge. I've made real good friends on this journey. I still find it hard to trust. I still find it, and that's I'm 43 years old, and I find it hard to trust. Yet here I am doing a live for everybody in the world to see, because I believe it's going to help my kids in the future. But when it comes to trusting people, I find it really hard and difficult. I didn't even trust myself sometimes. I can't explain just how much of an impact the disorganized attachment causes adults in their future life. I for a long time I thought I was doing the right things in relationship with people, but as I've learned now, I wasn't. I did, like, for instance, I didn't go visiting friends and things like that. I didn't pick up the phone and regularly when they do, and that's probably part of it. But it doesn't mean that I'm not their friend, or I didn't like them, or I'm out of touch. It's just my mind's constantly going at 1,000 miles an hour, coping with the trauma. And like I say, I was addicted, and I use my addiction now, my addictive personality, and the OCD. I've got OCD as well, mental OCD. I get medication for that, but I use that now to fully focus on the campaign, the cause, the greater good, trying to prevent child abuse and child neglect, to make the world a better place, because at least one way it's feeding the addiction, and two, it's a healthy coping habit as well. So that's how I managed to do this.
Absolutely. And I'll just say to everyone, I know that we'll be exploring things like relationships in a bit more detail with you in future and with your family in future. We definitely have Angela's story in the diary for the 19th of April. So do keep an eye out for that on the 7030 page, everyone. But I'm sure we'll have one with the family together at some point as well. I know this is important for you to talk about, Jay, that you've mentioned when we've chatted before, and I think it's important for everyone else to hear as well, about the impact that some of your experiences have had on your gender identity in terms of, and also I think the fact that female survivors are starting to speak out that a little bit more, but we haven't yet had a full stream of male survivors be able to speak up and take some of that stigma away. So I'd love to hear from you, as I know that you're really passionate about getting that information out there. Whatever you think is most relevant really around this. I think you've used the word emasculation before with me.
When I started this journey, recovery and healing, so to speak, I was looking at documentaries, videos, podcasts, and there was guys talking it, but all they were saying was it happened to them, and not just because it's absolutely fantastic that they speaking about it. But I'd been going to peer support groups, and I'd been listening to other survivors, and what people weren't speaking about on the videos and the podcasts, and that what you're talking about here is the gender identity, emasculation, what that actually does to a man. And like I said, I had a conversation earlier with a woman about it as well. There's a book written by two women about trauma, but I don't think that'll cover emasculation. And what happens when incest happens is basically, I felt for a long time I was gay by association, and so I spoke about it before. I battled against that my full life, and this toxic masculinity stuff, I broke Kieran up. Tough, pull your socks up and be a man, and don't act like that, and don't act like this way, because and it played a really, really big part of me, to the point that I had to go and do things that, like I said earlier on, that caused problems in a relationship to prove that I was a man. I had to get involved with crime at the time, and when I was doing it, it was to prove that I was a man half the time. I was constantly trying to prove I was a man, because that had been stripped away from me in childhood. That had been gone. Any concept of me being a man was gone around about 5-year-old, and I just feel that nobody talks about that enough. Nobody talks about the links of that scope with gender identity, with how it makes men feel. I mean, I'm walking about married, thinking that I'm gay by association, so therefore my views on different things were not the way they should be. And now that I've learned about it, I understand it, but I feel that the whole world could learn from understanding that as well, and the impact that that's got on men. Because, like I say, I'm not going to mention names, but I've come across a lot of male survivors, and I've spoken about it with them, and they've all agreed. Every single one that I've spoke to has agreed anyway that they've had that battle as well.
I can imagine. I imagine it's a battle that can even be harder for those who do end up being queer in some way, and have to kind of understand the root of that. Of it's a journey that people who are queer and haven't had traumatic experiences don't have to go through. But people, it adds a whole extra layer of complication, both within kind of your own sexuality and gender identity there. So definitely, I think that your courage to mention it and bring that up means that you're kind of looking at a whole extra dimension when you're looking at the issue of child sexual abuse, in a sense, because we talk about many elements of it, but I think it's one of the forms of trauma that is still, I feel like it manages to be ironically both the most spoken about and the most taboo, in the sense that you talk about it at a very superficial level, but it is the one that is obvious that people want to get rid of, in a way that things like, say, emotional neglect or abuse might not be. So definitely thank you for talking about that one, Jay.
No, I think it's a really important thing that there's. I know there's thousands of men out there that are feeling right now that battle right now, and half of them are probably thinking about numbing their brain or even possibly having severe mental health conditions where they're thinking about ending their lives, and we can't have that, Isabel. We can't have that. Not in this day and age. Not in this day and age.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and I think definitely the consequences around men's mental health cannot be underestimated, not just around child sexual abuse, but more generally with trauma. I think the possibility to speak up about impacts on your life is something that is luckily slowly changing, but we're not there yet. And it cannot be ignored, and we need to be addressing it now. And we need to be breaking those cycles, and we need to be protecting younger boys and younger children more generally as well.
Absolutely. I think there's some statistic out there that says that it's 1 in 3 homes that's happening to a girl and 1 in 6 is happening to a boy. 2 million in the UK never budged. And so many people think it's just them. And it's no, there's a whole hidden underworld that happening. And when I spoke out, the amount of people that I know, even, just, and I know a lot of people, so nobody can pin anybody down here, is that came to me and says, you know what, Jay, it happened to me, and it's like you say, it's so taboo. People didn't talk about it, and I've spoke with people and they say we can't talk about it. It's too triggering for the public, and it's like it's too triggering for the public. But what about us? What about us? What about our kids? You want to keep on just see no evil, hear no evil. We can't keep doing that as well, and somebody's got to break the cycle.
Absolutely, and I think the triggering is a really important conversation when we're talking, because we're doing all this campaigning for trauma-informed approaches, etc. And one of the 4 key parts of being trauma-informed is avoiding re-triggering someone, re-traumatizing someone. So I think we need to acknowledge the risks of, as we did at the beginning of this session, when these topics come up, you do risk triggering people. But I think when people use that as an excuse, they ignore the fact that triggers could be absolutely anything. It could be a smell, it could be a place, it could be a sound, it could be a word, it could be absolutely anything. And by making it taboo, you're probably still triggering them in many, many different ways. You're just not giving them a framework of support, and you're just not acknowledging them.
Can I just say that, see, from my point of view, that's like telling me, like when I was a kid, shush, or this will happen. That takes me straight back there, and it kind of angers. You've probably seen that in my reaction here, but it does. And I know that we need to be mindful of other people, but surely there's got to be a terminology we can get around where we can speak about this openly, nationally, and address it, because how long are we going to keep on just ignoring it for?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I think that the balance is definitely to avoid what we can in terms of this is unnecessary detail, but while still talking about the topic and being able to say, if you are triggered, this is the support available. But we need to be getting rid of that shame around it and allowing people to actually have the space to process, to deal with it, to know it isn't okay to, to take all the steps that they need to start healing, really. And I think I'm going to use that to lead into asking you what your healing journey has been like, and specifically in terms of what other people might have to think about, if as they start on this journey, in the positives and the negatives. I think we need to be honest about how bumpy a road and how wonderful it can be as well.
It's been a roller coaster, and I'm not going to lie to anybody. When you open up, it's no easy. It's no easy, but that's why you need to get the right support around you. Your doctor, get a therapist. I can't recommend highly enough speaking to a therapist and speaking through what's happened to you. Supportive friends are important. Get yourself to peer support groups, like the Hearts Ace one, where there's fellow people who have been through it and they'll understand it with you. The recovery journey for me has been absolutely, it's been unbelievable. It's been surreal. I think my recovery journey is I think it's a bit different for everybody else's. I don't think, I've had some wonderful opportunities open up, and at the same time, I've had to re-traumatize myself over and over and over and over and over again. And then obviously you've got vicarious trauma, which is traumatizing somebody else just by telling them your story. So you've got to be mindful of that as well. So the journey it's been worthwhile. I'll say that. It's instilled chinks of light and hope again that I'll be able to one day be free of the battles that I've got every day. And I've certainly learned a lot of coping mechanisms that have made me change my life for the better and for the healthier, and it's given me a purpose. Certainly Wave in the 70-30 campaign have definitely given me a purpose. But like I say, you've got to go through, you've got to open up, you've got to talk about it, and you've got to open up that box that you're looking away. And from my point of view anyway, and for a lot of people that I've spoke to, other men, that box is just like a poisonous box that's inside you, and it's just building up until you do release it, and you'll need to release it in some way, shape or form. And I would advise a healing journey similar to my own, where like I've said, GP, doctors, support with friends, peer support groups, and empowering yourself, more than ever, empowering yourself, taking your life back. Because if you're holding it away and blocking it away, you're always fighting and constantly keeping that there. So that's defining your life. That's defining your life. And then, for instance, I turned to substances, and that defined my life. Yet when I spoke about it, when I let it out, then now I can use it to make my life better. I can use it to make my life stronger. I can use it to help other people, and I have helped a lot of other people. I know that through various peer support groups, various. Just by speaking out, I know that by the comments and messages that I get. So your recovery journey is important to you first and foremost, but it will have a big impact on people around you and the wider community as a whole. And the more people that they take that choice to empower themselves and go and seek the help. A lot of men especially think it's not kind of talk about that, because the minute I talk about it, I'll get called this, that, the next thing, and it's important you talk about it. It's important you talk about it, because it's the only way that we will create change. It's the only way you will get better. It's the only way, if you're struggling, it's the only way you will get better is by opening up. And you didn't need to open up like I did publicly and on a video to the whole world. You just need to open up and talk. You just need to talk.
Yeah, and I think we always say healing happens in relationships, and that doesn't necessarily mean, a relationship like Jay and Angela. It just means that having human connection, feeling valued, is that first step. Feeling listened to is that first step. So yeah, and I would say I hope that this video is something that makes you feel safe enough to take a first step. It doesn't have to be the whole journey. It doesn't have to be God knows what, but I do hope that you walk away from this feeling that little bit braver, and that little bit safer. I think it is worth talking about, though, Jay, as we're talking about this healing journey, about experiences with support services that you come in contact with, because I think, I know from personal experience that you can sometimes reach out to ask for help and not have the best experience, and how demoralizing that can be. And so I think it's important that we talk about both the wonderful support that is out there and the big difference that can have, but also some of the obstacles that can come up sometimes, and that we're working very hard to change within Wave and within 70-30. I know that you've had a mixed bag of experiences with services yourself. Would you be happy to talk about any of those?
Yes, because I feel it's important. Overall, I've had a great experience. Overall, I'll say that psychology, although the waiting lists need to get sorted, the waiting lists are far too long. I'm back on them again because I lost my brother last year on my birthday. So I'm back on them again for grief counselling 2 years down the line. It's a 2-year waiting list. So we need, the CAMS is a big waiting list and all. We need to sort that out. Sorry, Isabel, I've totally just, services. But when I did get the help, my doctor, Dr. McIntyre, absolutely fantastic. He's the only male doctor I'll talk to, only because he was the only one that believed me about my knees, like when I complained about them, like when I was 20. He got me the surgeries and then the diagnosis for my knees. So I felt comfortable talking to him. Then there's, I felt comfortable talking to Dr. McIntyre. Then the psychology department, Dr. Gaynor Moffat, Dr. Catherine Watt, I can't thank them. They changed my life. The two of them changed my life. They really did. They helped me so much. They introduced me to group therapy, which then I went on in the community. There was no group therapy, so I created my MMA. And then after that, I had my first negative experience, and it was with an organisation. I'm not going to name them. However, I got too personal with them probably, and they dropped. I was in the middle of therapy with them, and I was halfway through. It was only into week 10, and I know you're allowed a week or 2 week break or whatever. And I'd heard that somebody for the company had been speaking about me behind my back, and I asked my therapist if I could have 2 weeks break to I tried to sort it out. And I got a text a couple of days later saying, no, sorry, we can't give you a 2 week break. You'll need to go back on the waiting list. And it's like, really? You halfway through up Pandora's box, you dropped me. So I don't know why the reason was for that. I don't know what they've done that for. I don't know why. But it's a situation that should never happen to any other survivor or anybody that's out there. Because especially what I'm going through now, it shouldn't happen. What I've found is that it's not the only charity. There's other charities out there as well. Charities are out there. Some of them are out there just for themselves to make money, and some of them out there genuinely help survivors. So all I would say there is be careful with it with the organisations you go with. There's some wonderful ones out there. Make sure you've got a therapist you can trust. But at the same time, be careful as well. And it's a shame you've got to be careful. I think I saw a report on the 70/30 page that the top 10 charities helping survivors are walking away with £300 million in profit or something. And that's money that could be going to helping other survivors or children. And that's unfortunate. That's just one of the things that we need to deal with and put up with. But we don't need to put up with. We can put a stop to it, but we need to deal with that, and we need to unfortunately choose our therapist wisely. Which we should be doing anyway, on a relational level. But the waiting lists and that experience for me were just two of my negative experiences. Overall, if you can get the proper help, the proper trauma-informed psychologist like I did, with Garen Moffat and Catherine Watt, then you're on to a winner. Your journey will be flying, and that will happen in 90% of the cases. So, it's not like there's hundreds of mobs out there who are willing. It was just that I came across. Like I say, Murphy's Law, if it can happen, it will happen to me. My brother died on my birthday last year, all days, and it's just like, trauma's got a habit of like just kicking me in the butt. We're just over the back of a 5-year court case, and that happens, and it's just, I would just say, I get lost for words when it comes to this, because the services, I could rant and rave about some of them, and I could praise the heavens about most of them, So it's really a case of just being careful about who you trust with your story when you're talking, and what organisation you're with, whether they're reputable, whether they're known, whether they've got a good reputation or a bad reputation. It's important to know that before you go and get therapy with them. And what I would say, the biggest advice I would say is, if you're going to get involved with a charity that's helping you, make sure you set your boundaries in place. Like, obviously, I'm sharing my story with you here, Isabel. At Wave, you've got a great support system in place that helped me and will help me after the call. So I know I'm safe here. So I know anybody that comes to Wave are going to be safe to come to Wave and talk about their stories. So.
Absolutely. And we had a whole call checking in beforehand, kind of setting those boundaries. And I think it's really, really important that we have that in place. I know that there are other survivors or Wave 70/30 ambassadors watching right now as well, who might want to share their story in the future. So I think it's quite important to really reassure them that we do have that in place, and that it would definitely be a discussion beforehand, what you're happy to cover, what you're not, the fact that might change at any moment, etc., etc. I think that was a great answer in terms of the different services. I know that when you have had trauma, it can be extremely hard to trust or to ask for help or to find that energy. And so I can fully understand why having even just one negative experience can be so disheartening. So I just want to say to anyone who has had those experiences, or anyone who's looking to reach out now who might have those experiences, please know that there are good situations out there. Please know that there are people working very, very hard to change the things that aren't working, and find the strength and courage to try again in a different way, because it really, really is worth getting that help and getting out there to start that journey for yourself, or maybe take the next step in that journey. I think even this could perhaps be a first step in your journey, in that sense.
Yeah, who knew when I told my story to Wave what I'd be doing now? Who knew? You just don't know what I can guarantee is if you tell your story, you will release a ton of weight off your shoulders, and opportunities may arise like have happened with me with Wave, and I can't be thankful enough for that.
Definitely. I'm just wondering, I'm going to leave people just a couple of minutes to dump any questions they might have for you, Jay, in the comments. We will definitely be filtering them with everything that we've just said about boundaries. So I will be selecting the ones to read out if there are any. But they're mainly doing that, Jay, just so I have a moment to review the questions we had a chat about and to see what's most worth bringing up there.
That's fine.
I think one that comes to mind that we brought up in our conversations previously, Jay, is the difference between the mindset of people who've had these experiences need to be fixed versus them learning to cope, them going on a healing journey. I think that I'd love to have a chat with you about that difference, because I think the mindset of things need to be fixed often goes back to that, what is wrong with this person, rather than they are a human being who deserves to thrive in their own life. So yeah, I'd kind of love to hear from you on that one.
I've already said I perceive myself as broken, and but I see myself as fixable, and I don't think that's what I tell myself logically. There isn't a fixable. There's no a broken or a fixed. There's a journey. There's just a journey in different parts of that journey, and I even need to get away from stop saying to myself that I'm broken and I'm guilty all the time. But there's no broken. There's no fixed. There's just you and your journey and where you are. And that's terminology that we probably need to get rid of. If I'm not living proof that we need to get rid of that terminology, we just saying what I said there, then what is? We're human beings. Things have happened to us, and some of us worse than others. And what's important though is the journey, the healing journey, the recovery. That's the important things. The empowering back, getting control back in your own life, empowering yourself. These are the important things. It's not a case of fixed and broken as much as I say it as to myself. It really isn't. And as I say, I'm doing it to myself again. I'm correcting myself, and this is what we've got to do with ourselves. If you're out there saying you're broken, just tell yourself there's no such thing. You're just on a journey, as I'm doing, because that it's subjective. It's you talk about the aces, the 4 and the 7. For me, one ace can be just as bad as all 10. So it's the recovery. It's a journey. And I don't think there should be a fixed and a broken even come into the conversation, because that then puts a lot of labels on it. And if I believe that I'm broken and I didn't keep fighting against that, then I'm never going to be able to heal myself. And I know that, and that's one of the ongoing battles that I've got. And I know, but if you tell people that they can get fixed, that offers hope. But at the same time, it leaves the option that they can be broken and stayed broken. So I think we should just stay away with fixed and broken personally, and just we're on a journey, and this is a part of the journey you're on. And then we can get to this stage of the journey, and then we can get to this stage of the journey. And then from there, you can hopefully choose to do whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to kind of that language with yourself side of things, there's kind of a couple of comments that I think are kind of worth pulling up. There's one brilliant here that's kind of saying, be kind to yourself, talk to yourself as you would to a child you love, which I think is a really good one. But also kind of pointing out about kind of acknowledging that it was okay to feel however you were feeling. And I think that includes feeling like you were broken for whatever reason, because I know that you specifically, Jay, were very much made to feel that in different ways. But I know that you're probably not the only one.
That's all spawn and I struggle to get in touch with my inner child, and that's where the point of fixed, broken, my healing journey. That's where I am on my healing journey. Is I can't seem to get in touch with my inner child, whether it's I can't get in touch with him or some part of me doesn't want to get in touch with him, and that causes me problems because it's hard to explain. So I'm not going to try and explain it, but getting in touch with inner child is so important. I find it difficult. I think it's just because of the age of the trauma when it happened. I think that's how I'm feeling it a wee bit more difficult. But let's say I've got coping skills, and I've got exercise that I try and get in touch with my inner child, and it is really so important. I wouldn't be doing the exercise if I didn't think it was key to my recovery and my healing.
Absolutely. And even if that is not a step you've fully managed yet, Jay, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why you're on here, is to prove that it is a journey. You know, you've not come on here as I am someone who has healed everything and is no longer affected. You're here as someone who's like, look, I've built some resilience up after having been through hell. So absolutely, I'm sure there will be people who are doing their recovery in a different order, people who are further ahead, people who are further behind.
Yeah.
So absolutely, absolutely. Let's have another quick look at what questions might be most. Oh, no, I remembered another comment that I thought of whilst you were talking. I think you mentioned kind of ACEs and I guess the severity of what you've been through. And I think it's really important to say that when we're talking about statistics and adverse childhood experiences and everything, we're talking about kind of averages across many, many different people. You know, you might have had an experience for a year at a moment that it wasn't a critical window for that, from someone you had a specific type of relationship with, and someone else might have had, you know, 20 experiences happen to them over years, and someone may have had one experience for a really long time. It's never as straightforward as what it appears once as an average. Everyone's story is complicated. Everyone's story has more factors coming into it, including protective factors and positive factors and resilience building factors coming into it. So, you know, when we're talking about the science, it's to be able to address the root causes, to be able to address the problems, to put our efforts where we can have the biggest difference. But it's not to say you personally have to tick this box, or you personally have to follow this, or you have to be at this level to be considered. So 100%, you know, whatever you have been through, be it one ACE, be it 10 ACEs, be it experiences that weren't in the original ACEs study, you know, bereavement, bullying, etc., that Jay's brought up. Please do be kind to yourself and start looking for help if that's what would help you, or even just acknowledging within yourself that you've been through something.
Yeah, I feel as also as well that there's a lot of talking about terminology around ACEs. Should they change the word ACEs? Should they change? And I feel that's time wasted on actually fixing the problem and preventing the problem. ACEs are what they are. They're an adverse childhood experience, and no matter what way you put it and what way you butter it up or what words you put on it, that is what it is. You know, so we waste time on that. And in regards, there's also another debate on the ACEs, the 10 ACEs. Is it a guideline? Is it a framework? Should it be done away with? Should we change it? You know, I think we should look at that, what Felicia and Anda done, with and use it as a guideline. They used the 10 most traumatic things that they could come up with in that study. We should use that as a guideline, not as a framework, not as a solid tool to predict things, but as a guideline to go forward. Because if we start using it as a predictive tool, then we're starting to put labels on people, telling people that, oh, you've had 7 ACEs, actually you're done, no hope left. You're well just gone home, and you know. So I feel it should be a guideline, but it's important as well for people's journeys to understand that there's. I hear too many times, you know, I can't talk about that because, like, again, what happened to him or what happened to you is much worse than what happened to me, and it's like, no, it's no. Even if it's depression, if you enter the darkness is the darkness, and the abyss is the abyss. You know, it doesn't matter how you get there, but especially through trauma. When you're younger, it doesn't matter if it's one event, it doesn't matter over a long period of time, short period of time. It's all subjective, and it's all how it affects an individual. So you're absolutely correct and spot on what you say, Isabel, and I agree with that.
And I think I really want to echo that. You know, it's not a competition in any way. And I think you deserve to be able to find that peer support, even if you've had a different experience. I also think that tying into that, we sometimes don't think of emotional impacts. That might be controlling behavior, it might be emotional abuse, it might be emotional neglect. All of those different side of things are often perceived as less impactful, when actually, you know, if I think of examples like domestic abuse, they're sometimes the ones that have the worst effects later on in life. So, you know, even if you're probably sitting there going, oh, but they've been through worse, or oh, do I even need to come to the table? If it's affecting you, if it is something that is weighed on you in some way, don't, you know, it's not a comparison. It's what will help you be able to heal in your own life.
And there's also letting people know what I still can't believe how much work we've got today to raise awareness on ACEs. I've mentioned it before. I got asked what this new card game ACEs was about, and I talk to people and they'll say, "I've no ACEs. I've no ACEs." Again, my childhood was perfect, and then they'll talk about how their dad was an alcoholic and used to batter them when they were younger, and their mum and dad used to fight all the time, and the mum used to stay in one room with that, and I'm just like, no ACEs, no. No, and it's like, but you can't say that to somebody. So, but that shows you just how ignorant and blind the whole general public are around adverse childhood experiences and ACEs. That half the population is probably walking about with ACEs and don't know that they've got ACEs.
Yeah, and I think that ticks into me to one of the key things that I was hoping to get out of today's live stream, which is what we normalize. And I think currently there are many, not necessarily general public, though also on some level, but there are moments when people think that their trauma is actually something completely normal, and that it isn't ACE, it isn't trauma, etc. Where on the flip side, being able to talk about those experiences, being able to talk about how they've affected you is not normalized, and it's stigmatized. And I think we need to be taking a hard look at ourselves as a society about what should be normal and what shouldn't be, and how we work towards that. And I know that all of the wonderful people who have been in the comments today, actually, we've had quite a few brilliant comments, are also taking part of this with us, Jay, in slowly normalizing being able to talk about this, in being able to change things, in being able to take action, and not having to feel shame about anything you might have been through.
That's the thing. Shame will drive. That's what shame. It was shame that drove me to try and end my life. It was shame. The twice I've attempted it, and it was shame and guilt. Shame and guilt that weren't even mine to carry. But when it's instilled to you, and when you're a child, then that carries right into you, right up in it. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep my house under control. I'm locked away in my bedroom, but shame and guilt. I carry a lot of shame and a lot of guilt still from my childhood. Shame for what happened to me, guilt because I never spoke out sooner, and that shame and guilt is never fault. And I'm saying that now, but it's a constant battle I've got with myself, and it's a battle that everybody's got with themselves. And in Scotland, suicide's the number one killer of men between 25 and 55, and I truly believe probably about 70-80% of them is because of trauma and they want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, Yvonne, as well. Shame keeps people quiet, I think.
It does. It really does.
And I think what you said there, Jay, about guilt about not speaking out sooner is something that I want to address, because I know you won't be the only person who feels that. And I think what we need to acknowledge with trauma is that our brain lets us deal with things when it is safe to do so. Sometimes we also say this on our training, if you are triggered, it might not be a bad thing. It might just be that your brain is now ready to deal with that. It's ready to open that Pandora's box. And I think similarly with that, when you spoke out was the moment you could. For everyone who might get to that point, even if you haven't had the courage to speak out yet, you don't need to have guilt around that. You will when you are in the space that you are able to. So whilst I know that there is a huge difference between knowing something rationally and feeling it emotionally and accepting it, I hope that at least on the rational level, you can internalize the fact that there is no right moment to speak out. There is no kind of, I should have done this sooner or whatever. You will do it whenever you can. And I know that that's especially true for many of our ambassadors who might be parents, who might have had different experiences with their earlier or later children, in terms of when they were able to start their healing journey. So I do hope that that element of guilt is something that can be looked at in the light of day for, this is when I had the tools and this is when I didn't.
No, absolutely. Guilt really gets to me. It really does. It's for some reason, as I say, it must be because you're a child and it's instilled in you, and you carry that right into adulthood. It's hard to get rid of that no speaking out. But I just want to reiterate, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. It's no your guilt to carry, and it's certainly no your shame to carry. And it's no shame to speak out. There's no shame in it at all. There's no shame at all speaking out. People talk about what a real man is. I don't believe there is a real definition of a real man. However, if there is one, then it's a man who'll acknowledge that things have happened and that it's affecting his life now, and he'll seek the help to go and get it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful message, Jay. And I think on that note, I'd like to ask you kind of one final question, which is there anything else you would like to get out there for today's live? Is there anything else you feel we need to cover around your story that people either should know about or should keep in mind? Or, what's your real takeaway message from all of this?
I think childhood, child services, it's been highlighted enough in the news, unfortunately. But there was signs in my childhood where I was screaming for help basically, and it was too easy to put it down to the death of my dad, the murder of my dad. I tried to chop off my own manhood. I tried to set fire at the house, and I hurt the animals. It's called the triad of psychopathy, and is a surefire sign that a child's been sexually abused, pretty much. So, we need to look out for the signs. We need an always available adult. Children need to have an always available adult. They need to have resilience. The ultimate message is to, for the purpose of the show, though, is for survivors, male and female, is to reach out. There are people out there who will listen and understand. We are getting into a stage of society. Society's evolving now. It's being more understanding, and please, I think it comes down to courage. It comes down to just find the time when you're ready to speak out and change your life and get your life back on track and reclaim your life.
Thank you, Jay. And I don't think I'm going to add anything. I think I'm going to let us end on that wonderful message. Thank you, everyone who has participated in the comments. I have seen some beautiful things there as well. I will send one last message to anyone who might be watching this after the live stream. Please do keep your comments kind, given the topics that we're discussing. But thank you so much for everything. Thank you, Jay, for sharing your story with us. And do keep an eye out for our next live stream with Angela on the 19th of April. But good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Night.